disappearing scene, the drive-in movie. Young people today seem to think they have it all, what with cell phones, computers, and video games. I got news for the youngsters. It ain't so, McGee. The 1960s was the first full decade of my childhood, and there were some really great times. There are a lot of things I would like to share about that decade, but I'm going to concentrate here on the drive-in movie theaters. There are not many of them around any longer, and generations of kids have missed out on all that fun. My family very seldom did anything spontaneous. All of our outings were planned days in advance, and going to the drive-in was no exception. Dad and Mom would begin midweek to check the movie section of the Saginaw News to see what would be playing. I always wanted to see a monster movie, but I never got one, not even one. Generally, we went on Friday night after Dad got home from work. He worked for Chevrolet Transmission as a setup man. And after the movie was selected, there would be a trip to the grocery store to pick up snacks and soda pop because, like today, snacks were an ungodly price at theater concession stands. So there would be candy bars, chips and dip, Coke, and popcorn made on that newfangled Jiffy Pop popcorn popper. Dad got out of work about 4:30 p.m., and before he hit the driveway, Mom had everything packed into a box so that it could easily be loaded into the car. I loved the drive-in, but I hated the trip there. You see, most theaters would let kids in under a certain age for free with their parents. And I can't remember under what age, but I think it was maybe 12 years old. And us kids were growing up, and it was difficult to lie about our ages any longer. So we were introduced to Mr. Trunk. That's right, several of us would be put in the trunk to avoid the price of the tickets. I was claustrophobic, and I hated being in the trunk. It was tight, hot, dark, plus I was always afraid that we would get caught, and that would be humiliating, especially if any of our school chums were about. But thankfully that never happened, and we were not the only kids getting out of trunks once darkness set in. Lots of people did it. Dad would always try to find the best place to park. The only thing other than being packed in the trunk that I really disliked, and that was the speakers. They were pretty much the same at all the theaters. They were attached to a post that you would pull the speaker over to your car window, and it hung there. The sound was always awful. It sounded like it was coming from a tin can. The sound was difficult to adjust so that everyone would be happy. If you were sitting next to the speaker, it was loud. If you were sitting in back, you had to really strain to hear what the actors were saying. For all the minor inconveniences, though, going to the drive-in was a lot of fun. And I remember one movie particularly well, and that was Viva Las Vegas, starring that super hot redhead Anne Margaret. I was probably about 7 years old when I saw that film, and when I saw Miss Margaret, I had my first crush. What a woman. As the song Viva Las Vegas was playing, I stood up in the car, where you see we had a Chevrolet Impala Super Sport convertible, and I began dancing wildly to the music, and I heard some applause coming from some of the cars around us, and one guy yelled out, "Shake it up, Tiger!" I also remember seeing Jack Lemmon and Walter Matthau in The Odd Couple, and my mom laughed so hard at that movie that I thought she would for sure pee her pants. But the last film I saw at a drive-in in Saginaw was, I believe, in 1972, and it was called Night of Dark Shadows, and was based on the by then canceled Dark Shadows TV series. Dad didn't like spooky films, but he gave in, and he and Mom treated me to see it. The movie was alright, but the fun was really gone. My brothers and sister were all off on their own lives by then, and I realized how much fun we had together, and that things would never be the same. The very last movie I saw at a drive-in was at Tawas, Michigan, years ago now. The movie was The Legend of Boggy Creek. My dad wanted to see it. Well, I did also, so I drove him to the movie. It really hit me then how much times had changed. Me driving him, I mean. The Tawas Drive-In was the perfect setting to see The Legend of Boggy Creek. The drive-in was situated far off the road, and right behind it was a swamp, and the movie was supposed to be a true story of a Bigfoot-type creature who lived in the swamps and backwaters in Arkansas. The sound effects from the film sounded very much like the sounds we were hearing behind us in the swamp. And while this is not about the drive-in, I have nonetheless a funny story to tell you. As Dad and I pulled out of the theater onto US 23, say around midnight, I pushed in an 8-track cartridge with the Moody Blues. not realizing that I had turned the volume all the way up to the max, that the speakers from dead silence was incredible with the crash of thunder. I had never seen my dad jump that high. I just went into hysterics as he let out with a stream of words that, well, I can't relate here as I try to keep this channel a family-friendly channel. Well, the drive-in theater has faded fast, what with the advent of big-screen televisions and cable movie networks. There are precious few drive-ins in the theaters around any longer. And here in Saginaw, in the summer, a West Side group pays homage to the outdoor theaters by showing 12 classic movies, one each weekend, weather cooperating. The event is called Movies on the Grass, and the movie is shown against a big screen supported on the side of a building, and there is no charge to see these wonderful old movies. Yes, the drive-in is pretty much gone, but I have very fond memories of those hot summer nights when I was a kid, and we were shoved into the trunk of the car as we headed for a night at the drive-in movies. Following is a short history of the drive-in movie theater that I found on Wikipedia, and I'm going to present that to you here now, separate from the work I've already done. The drive-in theater was patented by Camden, New Jersey chemical company magnate Richard M. Hollingshead, Jr., whose family owned and operated the R.M. Hollingshead Corporation chemical plant in Camden. In 1932, Hollingshead conducted outdoor theater tests in his driveway at 212 Thomas Avenue in Riverton. After nailing a screen to trees in his backyard, he set a 1928 Kodak projector on the hood of his car and put a radio behind the screen, testing different sound levels with his car window down and his car window up. Blocks under the vehicles in the driveway enabled him to determine the size and spacing of ramps so all automobiles could have a clear view of the screen. In 1921, however, a more public drive-in was created by Claude V. Caber in Comanche, Texas. Caber obtained a permit from the city to project films downtown in cars parked bumper to bumper to witness the screening of the silent films from their vehicles. Following these experiments of Carver and Hollingshead, it was Hollingshead who applied August 6, 1932 for a patent of his invention, and he was given the patent on May 16, 1933. Hollingshead Drive-In opened in New Jersey on June 6, 1933 on Admiral Wilson Boulevard in Pennsauken, a short distance from Cooper River Park. Rosemont Avenue now runs through the prior location. It offered 400 slots and a 40 by 50 feet screen. He advertised his drive-in theater with the slogan, "The whole family is welcome regardless of how noisy the children are." And the first film shown was the Adolphe Menjou film, Wife Beware, and the facility only operated 3 years, but during that time, the concept caught on in other states. The April 15, 1934 opening of Shankweiler's Auto Park in Orfield, Pennsylvania was followed by Galveston's drive-in short-reel theater, July 5, 1934, the Pico Drive-in Theater at Pico and Westward Boulevards in Los Angeles on September 9, 1934, and so on. Early drive-in theaters had to deal with noise pollution issues. The original Hollingshead Drive-In had speakers installed on the tower itself, which caused a sound delay affecting patrons at the rear of the drive-in's field. In 1935, the Pico Drive-In Theater attempted to solve this problem by having a row of speakers in front of the cars. Then in 1941, RCA introduced in-car speakers with individual volume controls, which solved those noisy pollution issues and provided satisfactory sound to the drive-in patron. Satisfactory, I might add, but not totally satisfying, because as I said earlier, it sounded like it was coming out of a tin can. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane. And this is Dennis saying, I hope you come back and check us out again real soon.